Hi everyone, I'm going to be talking about the Social Evolution Engine, a simulation platform built using the Unity game engine. I'm Jasmine, I'm a postdoc in the biology department at the University of St Andrews, and this is joint work with my colleague Chris in the computer science department and my wonderful supervisor Andy. The remarkable appearance of design in living organisms can be explained by natural selection. Darwin argued that those heritable traits which are associated with greater individual reproductive success will tend to accumulate in a population. Individuals will therefore appear as if they are designed to maximize their own fitness. But this leaves us with a puzzle. How do we explain the evolution of altruistic traits, traits that benefit one's social partners at the cost of individual fitness? This puzzle was solved by Bill Hamilton, who proposed that traits evolved to maximize not individual fitness, but inclusive fitness. Inclusive fitness is the sum of a focal individual's direct fitness and her indirect fitness, which is a component of the fitness of her social partners. These components are modulated by their relatedness to the focal individual, where higher relatedness means a greater indirect fitness component. Hamilton's theory of social evolution thus predicts that relatedness is a key concept required for the evolution of altruism. Thus far, much of the literature on social evolution theory has been focused on analytical models in the style of Taylor and Frank's seminal 1996 paper, How to Make a Kin Selection Model. In these models, organisms tend to vary along a single predefined social trait, and the results obtained are relatively abstract. We are interested in two things. One, extending the mathematical theory to more open-ended settings where a range of complex social behaviors are able to emerge on their own. And two, creating a tool which provides a more visual, interactive way of understanding the causal relationships influencing the evolution of social behaviors, and which can therefore be used for teaching and public outreach. To address both of these goals, we embarked on building a 3D simulation platform using the Unity game engine. Why Unity? Well, number one, it's a free-to-download game engine accessible to complete beginners. It has a huge user base with a comprehensive set of tutorials, an active community forum, and an asset store where you can purchase ready-made animated objects, scenery, and scripting frameworks. So there's a relatively low barrier to jumping into further developing the platform yourself, which helps with our goal of making it as accessible and as useful to as many people as possible. Unity has been used to build some popular and visually stunning games, as you can see here, so we can dream big. Now onto the structure of our simulation platform, which we call the Social Evolution Engine, or C. The idea is to provide a framework specifically for running experiments relating to social evolution theory. This means including ways for agents to interact, as well as ways to manipulate spatial structure, dispersal strategies, and relatedness among social groups. With this framework, one could easily set up an experiment using the basic pre-existing functions without having to learn how to code in Unity. But if you do know some Unity, or want to learn, then it should also be easy to grow and complexify the system yourself. We begin with a basic patch. Think of it as a nest or colony where social partners can interact. We can have as many of these as we want, up to a limit. Each patch is populated with food or energy. Again, we can decide how much, at what point it becomes available, and at what rate it regenerates, if at all. This is our basic virtual organism. It's a sphere with limbs, and it can use these limbs to interact with other organisms in different ways, depending on how the limbs are programmed. Attached to each organism is one script that encodes its genome, and a set of scripts which control the organism's morphology and behavior, taking instructions from its genome. We can think of these as the organism's genotype and phenotype. Finally, there's a single script which contains all the general parameters for a simulation run. These will be able to be inputted through the GUI, which is still under construction, but for now we can easily interact with them through the Unity editor. As you can see, we can set things like the number of patches, the number of creatures in each patch, the mutation rate, as well as things like scale of competition and relatedness. I'm now going to walk you through running a simulation. Here in the editor view, we can see our prefabs, which are template objects in our simulation that can be spawned and replicated any number of times and altered through mutations. We could import other prefabs in here, including much fancier 3D models if desired. So this is our organism prefab. And over here you can see the organism's genome. The organism has 6 limbs, each of which is controlled by a gene signifying whether the limb is a grabber, that's denoted as 1, a stinger, denoted as 2, or inert, denoted as 0. Grabbers can be used to grab food, but also to grab onto other organisms and move as one. Stingers destroy any food or organisms they touch. As you can see, we start the organisms off with 2 grabbing limbs and the rest inert. The organism also has some genes which describe how it prefers to use its stingers or grabbers, i.e., does it prefer to target food or other organisms with its grabbers, or does it prefer to target food or organisms with its stingers? The values we set here determine what the initial organisms look like when we start the simulation. Now we can look over at our run sim script, which sets the rest of the parameters for the simulation run. For this run, we're going to turn global competition on, meaning offspring compete across the whole population to gain a breeding spot in the next generation. And we're going to set relatedness within a patch to be high. These are the conditions under which we expect cooperative behaviors to be most likely to evolve. Now we play the simulation. And here we go. We can see our little creatures moving around their patch. In this run, the patch gets populated with food after a short time delay. We can zoom on out and scroll across to see the other patches. And there you've just seen the patches refresh for the next generation. We can also zoom in on a specific patch by clicking on it over here in the scene hierarchy. And there's patch number 2. Another thing we can do is pause the simulation for a moment and click on a specific individual to see more details about it, such as its genome. For example, we can see that this organism now has 3 grabbing limbs and also has a very high preference to grab food with those limbs, which is increased quite a bit from the value in the first generation. Much later on, we can see that the grabbing legs have evolved to fixation. In this much later generation, all 6 legs of all agents in the population are grabbers. Agents form large clusters early on and move and forage together as a group. Here's a screenshot where we can see this clustering behavior very clearly. Almost all the individuals in these patches are moving as a group. We also have the ability to zoom way out so we can quickly get a sense for what's going on across the population as a whole. For example, in this different simulation run, we can see that stingers have evolved across the population, based on all the red creatures dotting the patches. They turn red when they've been killed off by a stinger. One of the exciting things about building this platform with Unity, as I mentioned earlier, is how easy it is to add your own features in a modular way, or even import them ready-made from the asset store. I'm now going to showcase just a few little features we've been working on to give you an idea, but the possibilities are really endless. In this first video, we use color as a way of tracking energy consumption. Organisms turn brighter shades of yellow the more food they consume, allowing us to easily focus in on the behavior of these more successful individuals. A planned GUI feature will allow the user to toggle between this and using color to track number of offspring or number of social interactions. In this next video, we allow organisms to disperse between patches by joining the patches together and removing some of the walls to create maze-like passages. In this final clip, we show how our basic framework can be useful even in modeling things like artificial chemistry. In this simulation, each agent represents some amount of a compound. When agents collide, they cause a reaction where they are partially transformed and some random compound is generated. The products of the reaction can spatially bind with the reagents. We can use this principle to model both low-level interactions and high-level ones, for example, 2 people meeting and generating new ideas. Speaking of which, we're excited to say that we are already trialing C in 2 student research projects. The first, with 3 high school students, is on the evolution of virulence in a parasite affecting populations with different levels of social connectedness, a highly topical problem. And the second, with a master's student, is on the evolution of hierarchy in an artificial society. This clip you're seeing here, with agents connected to each other in food-sharing networks, is from her work, just this week. The platform is at the stage where the basic scientific structure is there, but our current goal is to publish a user-friendly web app version expressly for use in teaching and outreach. This is where we need your help. What features would you like to see? What would make this feel less scary to dive into yourself? And what we're most keen to hear, do you have any ideas for innovative ways that we can use the gaming interface inherent in Unity to create a more immersive, interactive experience that people will actually want to participate in for fun? If you're interested in this project and have ideas, we'd love to hear from you, and we welcome new collaborators. Thanks for listening.